So let's talk about the Panama Canal. So since Donald Trump has gained the presidency of the US, he's been a bit obsessed with the Panama Canal. Because this is, just to give you a bit of history, the Panama Canal was actually built by the Americans, and then some years ago, one of the US presidents either gave it or sold it to Panama. I'm not sure to what. But anyway, a huge amount of the world's shipping of goods travels through the Panama Canal. And Donald Trump is obsessed that the ports at either end of the Panama Canal are controlled by China, and he's not keen on that. Now, actually, the ports are controlled by a company that's based in Hong Kong called C.K. Hutchinson, and it's controlled by a guy named Ka-Shing. And since Donald Trump's been president, he's been putting a lot of pressure on the Panamanian government and Ka-Shing's C.K. Hutchinson company in Hong Kong that America wants to take control of these two ports at either end of the Panama Canal. Now, about 2 or 3 months ago, a deal was struck between BlackRock, which is a huge investment company in the USA, and C.K. Hutchinson, for BlackRock to purchase these two ports for a value of $22 billion. But that is not the whole story, because not only was it those two ports, but this deal also included another 41 ports, making a total of 43 ports. Now, those ports are all around the world. There's 7 in the Americas, there's 13 in Europe, there's 12 in the Middle East and Africa, 9 in Asia and 2 in Australia. Now, at the time that this deal was announced, the Chinese government in Beijing sort of, raised their concerns about this. And recently, as of today, there's been some news that this deal has been put on hold for the time being while discussions are ongoing. And it's quite interesting because I see a lot of Westerners on X. One of them was the well-known anti-China propagandist Gordon Chang, and he posted, see, this blocking of the deal just shows how the Chinese government control all companies. But I think you need to look at this from a point of view that any country would look at a deal like this. So these 43 ports, including the 2 Panama Canal ports, are very, very strategically important in world trade. Now, currently, China manufactures about 30% or a little more than 30% of the total goods in the world, and that's predicted to hit 45% by 2030. So you will have China who manufacture 45% of the world's goods in another 5 years' time. So shipping and ports are probably more important to China than any other country in the world at this point in time and in the future. So it's very, very important that China have no threat to these ports, because these ports will be used to get goods from China pretty much all around the world. And although there are alternative routes to using the Panama Canal, it adds many days, if not weeks, onto the journey. So, the Panama Canal ports are already important, but I think more importantly, strategically for China, are these 40 plus ports all around the world, because this is where Chinese trade goes. And I think for the Chinese government to have these ports fall into the control of an American company who will be guided and whatever by the US government is just an absolute no-no. And I can understand that. I think Many of these ports are on the China Belt and Road routes, and I think it would just be unacceptable for these ports to fall into the hands of the US, especially that the US, openly say that China is their adversary. But I really think that if you look at this from a point of view of common sense, it, it would the US give up a load of their ports around the world to that? So I think the answer would be no. But looking even more forward to that, the America have made no sort of, they've not hidden the fact that during a war with China, which they seem to talk about often, one of the strategies that America would use in any war against China would to block supply routes. And obviously, if they had control of those 40 plus ports around the world, they could cause serious problems to China's supply chain by forbidding China to use those ports. Additionally, we've also seen in very recently that there's been talk in the US that they don't like the fact that China have become so good at shipbuilding. So they're now proposing to charge Chinese-made vessels for docking in US ports, either by per ship. They were talking about $1.5 million per ship, or by tonnage of cargo. And I think that the figure that was mentioned was $1,000 per ton of cargo. So this obviously will, increase the cost of goods that come out of China quite considerably. Now imagine if America had control of those 40 something additional ports around the world. They could decide to charge that tariff in all of those ports as well, because they would control those, and that would cause serious problems for Chinese shipping. So I just find it quite incredible how people on X and generally people in the West seem to think that this is this is how China control all companies and that companies are not free. But what you've got to remember is this decision is a very, very strategically important. These ports are very, very strategically important for China. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. But as always, for now, take care.